Navigating economic uncertainty, the impact of elections and interest rates on business. Join the Bucketlist Accountant himself, David Patterson, as we discuss the ever-present challenges of elections and interest rates and their profound impact on business decisions. Learn how to navigate uncertainty in cash flow due to market conditions and the influence of media narratives. You'll gain some actionable strategies to capitalize on these fluctuations, turning potential setbacks into opportunities for growth. This episode will equip business leaders just like you with the insights needed to stay resilient and proactive in an unpredictable economic landscape. I'm your host, Anthony Pearl. Let's get into making your bucket list happen. David, we're at a time at the moment where elections and interest rates are high on the agenda. And it's not something that, quite frankly, whenever people are listening to this podcast, doesn't matter because it's always on the agenda, right? It's been on the agenda for many, many years. The question is how much does that have an impact on businesses in the way they're thinking, in the way that you're working with them? Because these are things that, whether we like it or not, tend to have an impact. You know, if anyone is looking at the Australian context in the last couple of years, there's no doubt that before, leading up to elections and at all levels of government, there's instability. Interest rates have been a big discussion point for a long time. You know, you and I remember when they were significantly higher. There was a one in front of the number that we're currently looking at for sure.
Absolutely.
Right. And yet it's still talked about, they're going to go up or they're going to go down or when is it going to happen? How do you get involved in that discussion and how do you overcome people's, need to deal with that?
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really, really good question. And I think especially right now, we're kind of right in the middle of both, aren't we? I mean, election's a little way away for us, but I think the American election at the minute still has an impact on us in Australia. So the biggest part of it is the uncertainty that it creates, and interest rates are a prime example. Through that period where interest rates were increasing, to me and speaking to business owners, it was the uncertainty of cash flow and the uncertainty of whether interest rates were going to go up again that were causing people to stop making decisions about purchasing something else or growth, or because they just weren't sure where interest rates were going to go and what impact that was going to have on cash flow. I think the worst part of interest rates is the not knowing. I think if interest rates stayed high-ish, so where they are at the minute, certainly not as high as they were, but high-ish compared to what they have been, if people knew that was going to be the rate for the next 12 months to 2 years, then interest rates don't become an issue because they've created, the certainty's been created around, okay, interest rates are higher than we'd like, but this is where they're going to be. So we've just got to make decisions around that. But they know exactly where their cash flow is going to be from an interest perspective. It's the uncertainty of knowing whether that interest rate's going to go up next month or the month after and the month after that people then start to worry. And the worry then impacts on their decision-making process. Elections, for me, similar, but probably not as dynamic as an interest rate impact on businesses because the interest rates are more now. I think for us, just in those few months leading up to an election, I think people pull back and hold off to see what's going to happen because especially if there's a chance of a change of government, then people are kind of uncertain and they're not going to make any major decisions at that point in time because, one government going out, another one coming in, outcomes could be vastly different in a few after the election. That's less of an uncertainty, I think, than the interest rates. I think the interest rates have a more immediate impact on people's cash flow. So it sort of stops them making decisions a little bit. I think the important part around the whole thing, though, is those two things are completely out of your control. But there's plenty of things that are still inside your control as far as running your business and growing your business are concerned that you can work on to continually grow and improve, even though you've got this uncertainty of interest rates and elections.
It's a really difficult thing to deal with because you feed into, when I say you, businesses feed into the whole media cycle insecurity. And, the truth is interest rates have been reasonably steady for quite some time. And it's the uncertainty is, are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? When is it going to happen? But even if whether they go up or down, it's not going to be by such a significant amount. And quite frankly, it's not really going to have a massive impact at the level that we're at. It's going to have an impact because that's what it's designed to do, whether they go up or down. But it's that period of uncertainty that we feed into. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? That we feed into that idea of that ongoing conversation, which has more of an impact than the actual movement itself.
100%. And that's the same across everything. And I think, unfortunately, the messages get delivered in a negative format because that drives the news better, in my opinion. So you're constantly getting a negative take, a negative spin on interest rate movements. You're constantly told how much extra it's going to cost every month. So it's a continual barrage of negativity that comes to you in the media. And that's going to wear on you. That's naturally going to wear on you and make you worry about things that, like you said, it's all relative, isn't it? Like a small change in interest rates might be $50 a week on your home mortgage. It might be $5,000 a week on a business that's, got millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment, but it's still all relative. Your turnover and your business, I guess, and if it's not, you should be working towards it to be able to absorb these changes without having a huge impact on the overall result. Short term, it'll have an impact, absolutely. Longer term, it should be just as like a blip.
And I think the uncertainty, you're right, it's a large part is the media that gives something to talk about on a consistent basis. But it also is about, people just feeding into the need to find something to latch onto. And interest rates is part of that. And it goes through different trends, isn't it? Because interest rates and elections have definitely been a major feature in recent times. What I've been interested in is observing is seems to have been less of an emphasis on petrol prices, which I mention petrol because it's a direct consequence of elections. It's a direct consequence of interest rates as well. And not only that, it has a massive impact on business because whether your business actually does any driving about and uses petrol doesn't matter because your suppliers do, the staff that are getting to and from work do, the stuff that you're bringing in from overseas is using petrol in the planes.
Yep.
There is, it is a huge impact. And yet, I observed just recently where I had a 2-week period where I didn't do much driving and I looked at petrol prices. I remember thinking about petrol prices just before that period started and noticed it at a particular level. And I noticed it just at the end of that 2-week cycle. And there was a 25% difference in the price.
Yep.
And I didn't hear anything about it. It's really choosing to feed into these cycles of, news and negativity and trying to find something to latch onto is a large part of what happens as a result of, of this all the time. It's uncertainty. It breeds uncertainty and you allow yourself to breed the uncertainty, right?
This podcast is brought to you by bucketlistaccounting.com.au. Speak to David Patterson and his team if you want to take better control of your life and business, helping small business owners like you be successful designing the life of your dreams. Go to bucketlistaccounting.com.au or check out the show notes for more information. Now back to the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And potentially it gives you an excuse as well if business or if not performing quite as well as what you would hope, interest rates are up, petrol prices are up, there's an election coming, so people aren't doing anything. But ultimately, there's still plenty, and it comes back to the things that you can control and the things that you can't control. Those things are going to happen. The interest rate changes are going to happen regardless of what you do, really, as an individual. Petrol prices, no control over that whatsoever. And elections, as you're building up to it, you've got no control over it at all. It's going to have an impact, no doubt. But the more you can focus on the areas within your business that you can control, the less of an impact those other areas are going to have on your business. And just being mindful, I guess, of the fact that, yes, it's going to be, and we're looking at social media all the time. So you're constantly seeing these stories and these news about interest rates might be going up, interest rates might be going down, whatever it is, wars or government, elections coming up. They're all hitting you all the time. And the more you can sort of acknowledge that they're there and then just turn slightly the other way and just focus on your areas, the more success you'll have. Not easy, I understand that, but it's an interesting. I find it really fascinating where we're at as far as all of that and how much it does impact us. When I think back, and again, you can't compare generations, but if I think back 20 years, we didn't have low interest rates. Interest rates were high, interest rates, and we didn't have the ups and downs that we do, or especially the downs, that we do, and the fact that it was so low for so long. Everyone still survived. We got through all that. I don't know whether it was because we didn't know any different, but they were the circumstances that we had and we just played with them. It's the same thing now. It's just that I think because of all the areas that we get information from and getting it all constantly, suddenly it feels more real and more impactful than what it probably really is.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing too is, does it create opportunities so that we've got this influx of information that's coming in, and do you capitalize on that? So to use the example I was referencing before, do you say, quick boys, let's go fill up today because petrol's dropped.
Yep.
And, if we all, we might save between us a few dollars, and that has a flow-on effect for the business. Again, depends if, what you're doing in what your business is like.
Mm-hmm.
But there are opportunities where there is uncertainty, there can be opportunities to capitalize for a business as well, because there is information about what might be happening. I mean, I often wonder, for example, you see a bank come out and say, I think interest rates are going to do this in the next month. Now, if they say they're going to drop, and that may be bucking a trend of what others are saying, then is that attracting people to come and go to that bank versus another bank because I think, well, we want to go in here because they're going to move first on the interest rates dropping. So if banks are potentially capitalizing on those opportunities, and I'm not saying that's necessarily why they're doing it and making those statements, but I'm just saying that there are, publicity breeds these things, and you can play into that yourself as well and capitalize on those opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. I think any time that there's a change of any circumstance or uncertainty, that there's opportunities there to take advantage of it. And it's just a matter of strategically thinking about what things you could do. And a bank probably is a good example of about saying, we think interest rates should come down, they might say, rather than could. They say should come down, and, come to us and we will take advantage of when it happens as it happens. And people start to think, there could be enormous marketing opportunities in with interest rates going up or down, depending on what you do. Retailers could develop a sale that's banked around interest rates going up, come in now and get a saving on, our aprons or whatever we're selling. But it comes back again to, if you've got some assistance with your business and you've got some people around you, you can better take advantage of these opportunities as well, because you can get some input from other people about ways to take advantage of it.
I think the challenge is making sure that it's not a gamble. I think, particularly when you talk about it, an election. Election's a perfect example. When you lead up to an election, parties promise one thing and another party promises another thing. So
Do you gamble on who's going to be elected and go into a particular area because you think there's going to be money or advantages, or, they're going to invest in this area, so therefore I should move into that space? There is an element of gamble in there. I can't remember too many elections where it was such a foregone conclusion that there was, that we were absolutely certain of who was going to win, because more often than not, when they think someone's going to win, the other one wins.
Yep.
So I think that kind of says it all. So there is an element of gambling with it, which you don't really want to do as a business, but there are opportunities nevertheless if you can take a measured approach.
I think a measured approach is right. And you can probably come up with some options as well. So depending, you certainly wouldn't make any decisions leading up to big decisions leading up to an election on how you operate. But you could certainly have some contingencies to sort of say, well, if this party gets in, let's go down this fork. If this party goes in, let's go down this fork. And so have some stuff ready to go for when you know the result. That's probably, rather than going chips all in on one party, because like you said, and I think if you think back to when Scott Morrison got in, I don't think anyone expected him to get in. So you just never know. And the polls are, you just wonder who they're polling sometimes, because they don't ever seem to get that right.
Let's not get started on it. Let's not get started on opinion polls. The stories I can tell you, but
I think
we won't.
You're right. As long as you're not going all in one side, and you're covering your bases, I think that's really all you can do. Once the election's done and dusted, full steam ahead. But until then,
well, I think so. So so we talked about there the idea of what the business itself can do in terms of trying to take some proactive steps and things. What you can't really control is what your clients might be thinking. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that the majority of people are feeding into this degree of uncertainty and not wanting to make a decision. And that happens at elections whenever there is a potential for a change in government.
Yep.
That is going to happen. The question is, how do you as a business, or should you as a business, be catering for that likely shift in the market, that there's going to be a degree of, well, we might have been up here in terms of our business, but now we know we're getting within a 6-month period, 12-month period of an election, and we know that we're likely to experience this. So we've got to try and find some way to counter that, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's all part of, and it's all part of having a good understanding of where your business sits and how it operates, and being prepared to move quickly for when that happens. So you know that every time an election is coming up, you have this dip. So having a think about, is there something that we can be doing, some plan that we can be implementing that allows us to ride that out as best as we possibly can, knowing that we're going to have to do it again in 3 years' time, and then again after that. So, I think it's all about just being prepared and willing to make a change quick for whatever happens.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson here, isn't it? Is be strategic in what you're doing, and have the ability to maneuver. Probably part of Bucketlist is having that ability to be able to capitalize on those opportunities, because there are opportunities, and because of the uncertainty in the market, may create some opportunities to swallow up competitors, for
Absolutely.
example.
Yep.
There are things that can happen because of people's failure to move in certain businesses, maybe another person's opportunity.
Oh, 100%. And I think, and I don't know who said it, but there's a reference about zigging when other people are zagging. And I think the more that you're working on how your business is performing, the better opportunities you've got of taking those opportunities. The better chance you've got of seeing the opportunities, and then the even better chance you've got of taking advantage of those opportunities when they come up, and being prepared and being strategic about how you attack them, rather than just jumping in and going bang and maybe missing something. Being really strategic and taking it one step at a time.
The Bucketlist Accountant podcast is brought to you by David Patterson and his team at Bucketlist Accountant.
Go and visit their website for more information, details, of course, in the show notes. I'm Anthony Pearl, your host from Podcast Done For You. We look forward to having your company in the next episode.